All right, so if you're anything like us, you loved Sapiens,
Yeah.
right? You might have even read Homo Deus.
At least tried to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing this new Harari book, Nexus,
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
You're like, is this thing worth my time?
It's a big book.
Yeah. So we're going to deep dive into Nexus and try to answer that question for you in just about 9 minutes.
I will say up front, for Harari fans, it's a tough one. It's definitely thought-provoking, but it's not Sapiens. You know what I mean?
Right. It's not going to be that same experience.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with the basics. For those who haven't heard of Nexus, a brief history of information networks from the Stone Age to AI.
Catchy title.
Came out pretty recently.
Yeah, last September.
And it's classic Harari in that it's big sweeping history looking at these big ideas.
This time he's really zeroing in on information and how these information networks have shaped society.
From the very beginning.
Yeah, from campfire gossip to algorithms on social media.
So he's building on this idea of shared fictions from Sapiens.
Right. Exactly. Like money, nations, religions, these things that we all believe in, even though they don't really exist outside of our collective imagination.
Right. It's like they only work if enough people buy into them.
Yeah.
Which is all about how that information spreads.
Precisely. And Nexus goes deep into how those networks evolve. He looks at ancient writing systems, the printing press, the internet, showing how each one changed, who has power, and how they use it.
Give us an example, something that really brings this to life.
Well, he talks about how the printing press, while revolutionary, helped spread some really harmful ideas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like one of the first bestsellers was The Hammer of Witches,
No way.
which fueled the witch hunts, and led to the deaths of thousands.
So much for the printing press leading to enlightenment and progress.
Right.
Automatically, at least.
Yeah.
So how does this all connect to AI? I mean, that seems like a whole other beast.
That's where Harari gets really interesting. He argues that AI, with its ability to process massive amounts of data and learn so quickly, has the potential to manipulate information networks like never before.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
Right, like think about social media algorithms that push extreme content just to keep us engaged.
Just to keep us scrolling.
Exactly. He sees echoes of those historical manipulation tactics, but on a scale we've never seen before.
That's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
A lot of reviewers are saying this book feels a bit repetitive, though. Like he's already said this stuff in his other books.
There is some overlap for sure, especially with Sapiens.
Right.
He revisits the concept of shared fictions and how they shape our reality. But Nexus really zooms in on information networks specifically. It's tracing their evolution and influence across history.
So it's more of a deeper dive into that one specific aspect of his bigger theory.
Exactly.
Okay. So what about the writing itself? I've heard some critics say it feels a bit simplistic, especially when he talks about something as complex as AI.
I think that's a valid criticism. He does have a knack for making complex topics accessible, but sometimes it feels like he's oversimplifying things, especially the technical details of AI.
Well, yeah, he's a historian, not a computer scientist.
Right. And that shows at times.
Okay. I can see how that could be frustrating,
Yeah.
especially for someone who's already familiar with AI.
Sure, but for readers who are new to these ideas, his explanations can be really helpful.
Right.
And even if you already know the basics of AI, Harari's historical perspective offers a fresh way of thinking about it. He connects the dots between ancient storytelling and modern algorithms in a way that's really thought-provoking.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal here. So how would you compare Nexus to some of his other books?
Well, if you loved that grand sweep of history in Sapiens, you'll find some of that here. But Nexus is more focused. Less about the whole human story and more about this one crucial thread of information networks.
So it's more niche.
In a way, yeah. It's not trying to cover everything like Homo Deus did. Nexus is more grounded, less speculative, and in some ways more urgent because it's addressing issues that are already impacting our lives, like the spread of misinformation online.
That definitely sounds relevant to what's happening in the world right now.
Absolutely. And in that sense, it's similar to 21 Lessons, where Harari tackled contemporary challenges.
Yeah.
But Nexus offers a deeper historical context, showing how these patterns of information flow and manipulation have been playing out for centuries.
Okay.
It's like he's saying, this isn't new. This has always been a thing.
Yeah.
We just have new tools for it now.
Interesting. Okay. It's just like those same patterns are playing out just with more powerful tech.
Exactly. And one thing that really stood out to me in Nexus was his analysis of how these information networks create power structures. He argues that whoever controls the flow of information, whether it's priests or kings or algorithms, Essentially controls society.
Right, because information shapes our beliefs, our values, our whole understanding of the world. But that's not exactly a new idea, is it?
No, but Harari's really good at connecting the dots across history. Like, he shows how this dynamic is played out in different ways throughout time. For example, he compares ancient empires that relied on complex bureaucracies to manage information to modern tech giants that use algorithms to shape what we see online.
So he's saying those ancient bureaucracies were like the early versions of the algorithms we have today.
Exactly. They're both systems designed to control the flow of information, even if the tools were totally different.
Right.
And that raises some important questions about how we manage information in the digital age. Are we just repeating the same patterns of control, but with more powerful technology?
It's like even though the tech changes, those underlying power dynamics stay the same.
Precisely. And that's where his comparison to the witch hunts gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He argues that those witch hunts weren't just about superstition, they were also about controlling information and silencing dissent.
Interesting.
Anyone who challenged the prevailing narratives, especially women, was labeled a witch and eliminated.
Wow. So the people in power use the fear of witches to consolidate their control over information and ultimately over society.
Exactly. And Harari sees parallels to that today in how misinformation and propaganda are used to manipulate public opinion and erode trust in institutions.
Right. So it's not like he's saying social media is causing these problems, but that it's amplifying these tendencies we already have towards tribalism and belief in simple narratives.
Precisely.
Like social media is just a tool. It can be used for good or for evil, depending on who's wielding it and for what purpose.
Exactly. And that brings us back to AI. Harari is concerned that AI, with its ability to personalize information and target specific individuals, could be used to manipulate us in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah, like those deep fakes that are becoming harder and harder to distinguish from real videos.
Exactly. It's scary to think about how easily people could be manipulated if they can't even trust what they see with their own eyes.
Right. So what does he say we should do about it?
Well, he doesn't offer any easy solutions, but he does suggest that we need to teach critical thinking skills from a young age and encourage people to be more skeptical of information that just confirms their existing biases.
So it's more about fostering a culture of critical thinking than trying to, like, police the flow of information.
Exactly, because in a free society, you can't really control information without also controlling people.
I see his point.
Right.
So how does Nexus compare to other books that are talking about these same issues, like the impact of technology on society and the spread of misinformation?
One that comes to mind is Shoshana Zuboff's The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. It's a dense read, but it's a powerful critique of how tech giants are collecting and monetizing our data, often in ways that are harmful and manipulative.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Huh.
It seems like everyone's talking about surveillance capitalism these days. How does Harari's take differ from Zuboff's?
Well, Zuboff is really focused on the economic model of surveillance capitalism, while Harari takes this broader historical perspective, showing how the control of information has always been a key lever of power.
So they're both addressing the same problem, but from different angles.
Exactly.
What other books would you recommend to someone who's interested in these themes?
If you want to go deeper into the potential for algorithms to perpetuate bias and discrimination, Kathy O'Neill's Weapons of Math Destruction is a must-read. She shows how algorithms are being used in everything from hiring decisions to criminal justice, often with devastating consequences for marginalized communities.
That sounds intense.
It is, but it's also incredibly important because it shows how these seemingly neutral algorithms can actually amplify existing inequalities.
Which goes back to Harari's point about needing more transparency and accountability in how we develop and implement these systems.
Exactly. If we're not careful, these algorithms could end up just reinforcing those same power structures that Harari's warning us about.
Right. Okay, so we've got Zuboff O'Neill. Any other recommendations?
If you're interested in the philosophical implications of AI and how it could reshape what it means to be human, Max Tegmark's Life 3.0 is a really fascinating exploration of different scenarios for the future of intelligence.
And how does Tegmark's view on AI compare to Harari's?
Tegmark is more optimistic about AI's potential to benefit humanity, while Harari tends to be more cautious, even pessimistic at times.
So it's like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
One saying, hey, AI could be amazing if we do it right, and the other saying, hold on, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's some serious risks here.
Exactly. And I think both perspectives are important to consider. We need to be aware of both the potential benefits and the potential dangers of AI if we're going to navigate this new technological landscape responsibly.
Okay, so we've got a good list of books to check out now. But To help our listeners make a decision about Nexus, let's cut to the chase. Is it worth their time? Especially if they might already be familiar with some of these ideas from his other books.
That's the big question. And honestly, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're hoping for that like groundbreaking, mind-blowing experience you had with Sapiens, you might be a little disappointed.
So it's not his most revolutionary work.
Probably not. But that doesn't mean it's not valuable, you
Yeah.
know? Nexus is a really timely and relevant read, I think. It deepens our understanding of the forces that are shaping the world today. It's more focused, more urgent, and in some ways more unsettling because it's addressing these very real challenges we're facing with misinformation, political polarization, and the rise of AI.
So it's less about expanding our understanding of the past and more about grappling with the challenges of the present.
Exactly. And I think that makes it a really compelling read for anyone who's concerned about where we're headed as a society.
Okay, so we've talked about what Nexus is, about how it compares to Harari's other books, and even some other books you could check out if you want to explore similar themes. But just to wrap things up, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with from this deep dive?
I'd say if you're the kind of person who finishes a Harari book and immediately wants to debate the ideas with someone, then Nexus will definitely give you plenty to chew on.
Okay, so it's conversation starter, not just another dense history book.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is how he connects these seemingly disparate threads, ancient myths, bureaucratic systems, social media algorithms into this grand narrative about information. You know, he's really prompting us to see the connections between the past, the present, and the future of how we share and receive knowledge.
And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable for our listeners, right? We're not just summarizing the book. We're adding that context and analysis to help you make those connections.
The goal isn't to just tell you what's in the book. It's to spark your own thinking, to help you decide if these ideas resonate with you and if this is a journey you want to take with Harari.
And I think we've given you the tools to do that. We've explored those core concepts, the strengths and weaknesses, the comparisons to other works. So now it's up to you to make that decision.
Yeah, but before you do, I want to leave you with one final thought. Something that wasn't explicitly mentioned in the book, but that I kept thinking about.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So Harari talks a lot about the dangers of AI manipulating information networks, right?
Right? That seems to be his biggest concern.
But what if we flip that around? What if we thought about how humans could use AI to manipulate information networks for good? If AI can be used to spread misinformation and division, couldn't it also be used to promote truth and understanding and cooperation?
That's a really interesting question. It's instead of just fearing AI, what if we started thinking about how we could use its power to counteract those negative trends?
Exactly. Because technology is ultimately a tool. It can be used for good or for evil. And the choices we make today about how we develop and implement AI will have a huge impact on the future of information and therefore the future of humanity.
Okay, that's a really powerful thought to leave our listeners with. So as you decide whether or not to add Nexus to your reading list, keep that question in mind, because the future of information isn't predetermined. It's being shaped right now by the choices we make.
And those choices are in your hands.
That's right. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Nexus. We'll catch you next time.